But are you ready now, I guess, to talk about tiaras and like superpowers and
Everything,
invisible
yeah.
plane? Yeah? All right.
Yeah.
Yo, good greetings. This is my summer lair. I'm your host, Sammy. In my satin tights, fighting for your rights, Yunan. It's Wonder Woman Day, actually every day, at the Cartoon Art Museum, who are currently hosting The Legend of Wonder Woman. This exhibition celebrates 80 years of the superb superhero with a range of artwork and insights, and even focuses on her villains. If you're lucky, only if you're lucky, you might be able to see her invisible plane. While in October 2021, Wonder Woman will celebrate her 80-year-old debut in All Star Comics in 1941, this isn't the only anniversary we're celebrating. Andrew Farago is an avid writer of pop culture slash books about comic characters, while his day job is the curator of the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco. He'll be celebrating his 20th anniversary, having curated and arranged a variety of exhibitions in the past: a Spider Man 40th anniversary exhibition, an American Splendor showcase, Raw Fury, The Art of Mike Zeck, and the 80th anniversary of The Dark Knight. Like Batman, Andrew operates in the shadows, and like Wonder Woman, Andrew relies on his wits and talents to make this world a better place. As you're about to hear, the legend of Wonder Woman is drawing, get it? Drawing generations of fans, a preview of what to expect at the exhibition, and so much more, including why Andrew believes Disco Stew, yeah, Disco Stew, should be in an old folks' home. But oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, we're going to start with this whole conversation off by talking about the jaw dropping G.I. Joe two parter, Worlds Without End, from November 4 and 5 in 1985. A handful of Joes wake up in an alternative reality where Cobra has won. As a kid, it was mind blowing and wildly unsettling. I'm still processing it. It later formed a massive cornerstone of my imagination. So, yeah, let's get into all of this. Before we get into Wonder Woman, I want to ask you about a recent tweet that you had. You tweeted out the G.I. Joe two-parter. Remember this tweet? The G.I. Joe
Oh, yes.
two-parter, Worlds Without End. This is your tweet. A small team of Joes visits an alternative reality, and three of them actually end up staying behind at story's end. Wild stuff. That those two episodes, it's not even just like they visit an alternative reality. It's a reality where Cobra won. Those two episodes are mind-blowing.
Yeah, that was a two-parter by Martin Pasco, and G.I. Joe went all out with those two-part episodes. They
Mm-hmm.
did sci-fi horror, they did really weird, interesting character development on those episodes. And Worlds Without End was amazing because that it really raised the stakes compared to a typical GI Joe episode where you had, beginning, middle, end, everything was back to status quo by the end of the episode. And this is one of the first shows I remember that really shook things up by the end of the story.
Yeah, but also not just shook things up for the G.I. Joes, but also for me emotionally, like, because you're watching it and, like, what's happening? Like, it. G.I. Joe was slightly goofy. Like, it was still, like, war, and they were still shooting, and there was the fight with Cobra and all that. But it bordered a little bit more on goofy. And then, much in the same way that Transformers, the movie, kind of shook everyone when Optimus died. You're like, because you're like 10 or 12 years old, and, like, what's happening here?
That's a spoiler.
Oh, yeah, spoiler. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to write about, you know, I've got a great job. I got to write about GI Joe and Transformers for an '80s animation book that I wrote called Totally Awesome, and I actually got to interview a lot of the people who worked on the cartoons, and it was great getting all those behind the scenes stories. And basically when they were writing Transformers the movie, they said, we're not selling these toys anymore. Can we do whatever we want with these characters? And they got permission and they ran with it. They just said, we're gonna we're gonna show kids their childhood getting violently murdered on screen in front of them.
Yeah.
All for the cost of a $1 or $2 matinee movie ticket in 1986.
That it was like it was a bar mitzvah because we all walked in there as children. We left as men. Like,
Oh yeah.
right? It was like you saw something. Like it's like the guys that came back from like Vietnam or something. You know what I mean? Like you don't really talk about it because you just saw some things and you don't know how to put it into like perspective at that age. So you're like, it's in the soul. But I do, since you brought it up, I do want to talk about your cool job. So introduce yourself, what it is that you do, and your favorite newspaper comic strip. So introduce yourself, what you do, and your favorite newspaper comic strip. It could be like Farside, Garfield, whatever it may be.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Andrew Farago. I am. My day job is I'm the curator of the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco. And sideline, I have written several books on comics and cartoons and pop culture history, frequently for a publisher called Insight Editions. And yeah, so I write comics. I self-publish a little bit of everything. And for me, it all started with the Peanuts comic strip. That was my favorite. As a kid in the newspaper, I read a lot of others. I was fortunate to grow up in that golden age of the 80s when we had Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side of Bloom County, just blowing our minds in the newspaper every day. Peanuts is the one that stuck with me the most, but I could fill this whole conversation with all my favorite newspaper comics.
I knew it was gonna be a dangerous question. I don't know if you could narrow it down to one, but I thought it would be a good way to kind of give us some flavor of where you're coming from. And in terms of Peanuts, like, is there a particular character or characters within the strip that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I identified with Charlie Brown from the beginning. So any kid that ever felt sad or put upon or who was concerned that the world was not as fair as it could be, latched onto Charlie Brown. And our first pet was actually a beagle, so that was really appropriate. Peanuts is another subject I've been fortunate enough to write about. I got to write a complete character guide for Peanuts, which came out about 4 years ago. And I've been fortunate to get to know and work with Jeannie Schultz, Charles Schultz's widow, and work with her and the fine staff at the Charles Schultz Museum over in Santa Rosa. So yeah, I've been very, very fortunate that I've gotten to work with these characters that are so near and dear to me.
And one of the characters you're currently working with is an exhibition called The Legend of Wonder Woman, which celebrates 80 years of the superhero. Can you share a couple of highlights of what to expect when people go to the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco? What can they expect or what can they see when they go see The Legend of Wonder Woman?
Sure. An interesting thing about that is we were not necessarily thinking about the 80th anniversary when we first started planning this exhibition, but obviously everything's been in upheaval for the past year and a half. We actually had to be closed because of California and San Francisco regulations. We had to be closed to the public for most of a year. And we'd originally aimed for the release date of Wonder Woman 1984 for our exhibition, but that got pushed back several times. And it ended up being kind of a happy coincidence that it was her 80th anniversary when we finally got this rolling. But I'm very lucky that we had access to some incredible art collections and artists, including several local creators, including Trina Robbins, who she's terrific. She actually drew a 4-issue Wonder Woman miniseries in the 1980s. We have recent artists like Liam Sharp. We have Mick Gray, who's inking Carrie Nord's Wonder Woman series pretty recently. So I had a lot of wonderful resources right here in my own backyard, which was great. And yeah, we tapped Andy Mangles, who is the world's foremost Wonder Woman collector and historian, and got to tap his collection and his expertise. So yeah, I got to work with some incredible people, and we have work going all the way back to the 1940s. We have the original Wonder Woman artist H.G. Peter, and we have things from the Linda Carter era. We have some Super Friends on display, and we go all the way to 2021 with the fantastic graphic novel Nubia. Artist Robin Smith came through in a big way and gave us access to her brand new artwork for Nubia. So it's really it's really a great exhibition, and I've loved seeing families, especially kids, especially it's fun seeing the generations connect. I see grandmothers and their granddaughters coming in and being equally excited to see Wonder Woman artwork.
Is that different than like that whole like generation and the way that like grandmothers are connecting with the kids and stuff? Is that different than like past like retrospectives? Like you've done stuff with like Batman, for example, right? Who also is 80 years old and has a large fan base. Superman as well. Like, is it kind of a different crowd? Just like in terms of generations, because Wonder Woman has always been kind of a cultural icon. Not that Superman, Batman hasn't, but she's kind of had a little bit more cultural cachet than some of those other guys.
It's interesting. Um, we've done up to the minute brand new exhibitions. Like I remember when Leica released Coraline, we got to do an exhibition with them, and we had artwork and puppets from that, and that exhibition energized everybody, even though they hadn't seen the Coraline movie yet. They were really excited about it. We had such a wonderful response to that. And a few years back, we had a Ninja Turtles exhibition, and that's obviously a newer property than Wonder Woman, but that still had the generational aspect. That still had people my age and a little bit older who were starting to become parents, bringing their kids in and sharing that with them. And that's something that's always been part of the experience when you visit the museum. You get to see some of these characters that have been around for 50 or 75 or 100 years, and you get to see those connections, but you also get to make new connections through current artists. And it's always great because just a visit there makes families connect with each other and talk about these shared experiences.
What is it you think that runs like as a commonality through these characters? Like I mentioned already, Batman is 80, like Wonder Woman's 80. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as you mentioned, they've started in the mid 80s, but they're getting up there, closing on almost 40 years. Charlie Brown and Peanuts, that's been around forever as well. Like when you look at these characters, is there some sort of commonality of why they last decade after decade and, like you said, connect with people and have all these shared experiences?
Yeah, I think for a character to really endure, you have to, on some level, you have to see yourself in them. You have to make that connection. And sometimes with a character like Charlie Brown, it's that feeling of, yes, I have these exact feelings. I've gone through this.
Nobody will let me kick the football.
Right. This is exactly my experience. And then you may have characters who are more successful, like Bugs Bunny or Superman, and you may see, and Wonder Woman too. You may see them as aspirational characters. Like you love seeing them triumph over the bad guys. You love seeing them succeed, and that's inspiring. We connect and we relate to that too, and that's the wonderful thing about storytelling is it connects us no matter where you grew up, how old you are. We can all enjoy a good story.
Yeah, and for like characters like Superman, Batman, and now Wonder Woman, obviously, like part of that storytelling it unfolds a lot in comic books, which has a lot of continuity. So I'm curious, like you've written about Batman as well. Your book was Batman: The Definitive History of the Dark Knight and comics, film, and beyond. So I'm curious about continuity. Like, has like putting together these type of exhibitions, like this Wonder Woman or like the Batman exhibition, has it kind of given you any pause, or does it make you reflect on the value of continuity?
It's yeah, that's an interesting question. I think telling stories that again that are going to connect with people. I think that is more and more that's the most important thing. I always appreciate um, I always appreciate when newer storytellers understand the core concept of a character and don't they may turn it on its ear. They may find a radical new approach to it that
Mm-hmm.
people hadn't considered before. But these characters are very flexible, I would say, and they're adaptable. Ninja Turtles is about to undergo another transformation, but as long as you keep them teenagers, as long as they are
Eating pizza.
eating pizza in New York City, they're brothers who are looking out for each other, and they're ready to protect people who need help. That you need to keep that. Batman, you need to have someone whose life was impacted by tragedy, and that person wants to make sure that nobody else has to suffer that same kind of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things like that. Has to be Superman has to be an aspirational character that represents the best in us. As long as storytellers understand this, I don't think it matters, especially what happened in issue number 73 uh 9 years ago on page 19. Like, I don't know that is the type of continuity we need to worry about, but I do want my Superman to be a genuinely good person trying to do what's best for everyone. And I want
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles to be, I want them to be brothers who were bonded and having having adventures, wanting to protect people.
What you're talking about too, like Wonder Woman is a good example where like she's had kind of murkier origins compared to like say Batman and Superman, right? Sometimes she's made out of clay, sometimes they've retconned that. Sometimes she's the daughter of Zeus. Like it's not a quite the same Superman thing, right? Of like put him in the rocket, send him to Smallville, and off he goes. It's got a murkier, I guess, convoluted way of looking at it. I know who everyone knows who she is, but how she got there is a strange path.
Yeah, I think she may be even more open to reinterpretation because of that. And I think it is probably a little harder to get a handle on her, but I also think that gives storytellers a lot of creative freedom. And again, the core of Wonder Woman is that she's here to help. If they stick with that,
Mm-hmm.
if she is inspiring people and encouraging hope and love and kindness, that's at her core. And I think the most successful Wonder Woman stories have known that.
What about the unsuccessful or the unpopular Wonder Woman stories? So, like, with an exhibition like this, The Legend of Wonder Woman, like, how do you balance the criticism of certain eras, like the mod era, where she didn't really have any superpowers? She was wearing, like, kind of a karate judo outfit for a while. The Taco Wiz era was another one that a lot of fans despised. She was working at, I think was it a Boston taco joint, something like that. She was working
Yeah.
basically as a waitress. So how do you balance, I guess, quote unquote unpopular or despised or whatever word you want to use with the fans and with the people versus like the popular stuff with like George Perez, right? Everyone kind of loves that run.
Hmm.
So how do you balance it when you put an exhibition like that together?
I think in a lot of ways these characters are, I think they're indestructible, and I think they can survive these little bumps in the road. Sometimes these changes actually help us appreciate characters that we may have taken for granted. The Wonder Woman, the mod direction that she went in the '60s, it was at a time when Marvel had come along, so kids were looking at DC comics and thinking these are a little bit old fashioned. These are these are really the same exact type of comics that my parents were reading.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you do have to shake things up. You take some chances. Things might work, they might not. And we might not have Wonder Woman right now if DC hadn't taken that chance back then. If and it happened with Batman as well, where his comic was a little bit underappreciated for a time and was in danger of cancellation. Right up until the time that the TV show.
The Adam West show.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that. If you read my book,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get that whole story. But these characters who've been around month in, month out for such a long time. Um, you need fresh takes. You need fresh voices every once in a while, and some of them will be wildly successful. Some of them will be noble experiments
Mm-hmm.
or noble failures. But you can take chances, and that core original character will always be there. You will always go back to Superman in his classic outfit, being Clark Kent, a reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper. That will always come back to those core concepts.
We
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I was gonna say we see this with like the way people talk about The Simpsons, where they're like season 10 was the best season, or this season, or like it hasn't been funny in like several decades, in like in 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is. But I'm like, Simpsons is 33 seasons. It's not something we've ever seen before. You can't assimilate it in a way like it's the same thing. Like Wonder Woman's been around for 80 years. There's bound to be turkeys. You know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
don't last this long without putting out some sort of crap. Regardless of whether I feel it's crap or not, like you're bound to put out some cheese. You know what I mean? And Simpsons has been around for 33 seasons. They're bound to put out cheese. But if the quality, if the core of you, like you were saying, the core of the character and the adventures of the stories, if the majority of it or the bulk of it is really solid and still captivating audiences and connecting with people, it'll continue to thrive. But you do have to get through those periods of cheese.
yeah. And The Simpsons, like you said, The Simpsons is unprecedented. Unprecedented. It's been running. If the Flintstones had been on this long, I mean, they arguably went off the rails by their final season, and they only lasted about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I have that number wrong, but yeah, by their final seasons, they were kind of, we're having aliens, we're having time travel, we're doing wacky sci-fi stuff. The Simpsons overall stayed pretty true to the concept of like it's a family, and all their adventures, all their exploits spring from their family relationships. And um, you can't make sense of their continuity because
There really isn't one.
yeah, I've gone from, I was just a little bit older than Bart Simpson when those first shorts aired on the Tracy Ullman show,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm older than Homer Simpson. And I actually realized when I was looking at the continuity and what makes sense as far as when these characters would have been born and how it all fits into a timeline. Disco Stu should actually be, he should be about ready for the Springfield retirement castle.
Yeah.
Right now, if you want to have a character whose whole thing is he was a little too old for disco and hung on to it way longer than he should have.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's retirement age now, and he should
hang up the platform shoes.
Yeah, and he's getting closer to Grandpa Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
If he's a World War II veteran, then he is getting up to 90 or 100. If you're just making him old enough to be Homer's dad, then again he and Disco Stu should be about the same age, and they should be sitting in the lounge at the retirement home trading stories.
Yeah, I've noticed, like, this is a tangent, we'll return back to Wonder Woman, but I've noticed, like, the last couple of seasons with Principal Skinner, they haven't done a lot of Vietnam flashbacks or reference Vietnam or whatever. That used to be like one of his core characteristics. And they've obviously moved on because, again, as new generations of kids come in, Vietnam's just a nice place to visit now. It's like a tourist destination. They have no concept of it as we did, like in the 80s, coming after that war.
Yeah, it's the thing that happens when these characters, when they're around for decades, and we're supposed to, and part of the concept is these are the same characters today that they were 20, 50, 80 years ago. You've got to fudge things a little bit. You've got to fine tune it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the Fantastic Four, where Reed Richards and Ben Grimm were very explicitly World War II vets.
No, that's right, yeah.
When that comic started, and that's just because so many men of their generation were. It made sense that would be part of their background.
Yeah, Kirby fought in the war, didn't he?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. And over time, it became like, okay, well, it's less important that they had military service because it's less important to their background, because now they would have come of age that much later. So they downplayed it to just the war, and then they just simply stopped addressing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the Simpsons producers may have actually said recently that you have to just consider each episode being its own separate little pocket universe. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. You have characters who have a history together that may or may not relate to the episode you're watching. You have characters who have very explicitly 70s origin stories like Disco Stu that as that gets farther and farther into the past, you really have to adjust that.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's fun, and it gives fans something to do.
Whereas like the Sea Captain is timeless because the sea never goes away.
Right. But you look at Krusty the Clown and you think how many we don't really have the local after school hosts
mm-hmm.
who are there for kids every day, because you don't come home, you don't turn on that, you don't have everybody in your neighborhood turn on that exact channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's fun. It gives us all things to talk about.
So I want to stay with that thread for a second, because we can tie this back to Wonder Woman, and I'm curious about this concept, right? Because you only get one chance to make a good first impression, right? So do the way that these characters like Wonder Woman come into somebody's life change the perception of the character? Like, we as like children of the 80s, right? We had limited on-ramps to characters. Wonder Woman, there was the Linda Carter TV show, obviously, which was a big hit, especially for young boys, and some cartoons, and then primarily the comic books. That's really where the core of our time with Wonder Woman was spent. But for like people today, even non-fans, they get exposure because there's several feature films. The Snyder ones, the Patty Jenkins ones. There's animated movies, there's cartoons, there's the Lego movie, there's Wonder Woman Lego, there's video games, there's books. The comics are almost secondary or like not even really on that list, even if you're just a casual person. So does the first encounter, does that affect love at first sight?
I think so. For me, it would have absolutely been Super Friends. And, Wonder Woman was, she was such a vital, important part of that team. She was, she was in some ways, she was right up there with Superman as far as strength and abilities to get things done. So that made a very positive, strong first impression, and that led to not long after that I saw the Linda Carter show in syndication, and she was terrific. She was to Wonder Woman what Christopher Reeve was to Superman. It was just
That's a
the
good analogy, yeah.
living embodiment of that character. And it's interesting, like I hear from people who have kind of appointed themselves as gatekeepers all the time, as far as characters and comics go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been forever since you've been able to say comics were absolutely your first introduction to superheroes, to any of this. Superman was on the radio in the 40s. He was in animation in the 40s. Batman had movie serials, and so did Captain Marvel. And if you are, unless you're Grandpa Simpson, your first encounter with most of these characters was probably animation or toys. Not counting the characters who are exclusively comic book characters, but I don't really have any time for gatekeepers as far as that goes. The modern superhero movies, due to the fact you generally have to go to a comic book shop, or thankfully now you can go to your school library and get superhero comics and graphic novels, but you're much more likely to be introduced to these characters through the Marvel movies or video games or animation. And that's cool. Like the more that gets out there, I would hate to think somebody would call me a fake fan because I watched Super Friends before I was a DC Comics reader, or saw Spider-Man on the Electric Company before I had an amazing Spider-Man subscription. It's all good. Like all these pathways that get people excited about characters and storytelling. That's a good thing.
And as you said too, like this exhibition has a number of artists who are obviously very popular in the comic book world. Is there any particular artist that you are a favorite of, or you got some artwork for this exhibition that you were like, oh wow, this is really cool stuff?
Yeah, I mean we've got a couple of George Perez covers, and he's one of those first favorite artists that that the 80s kids latched onto, and I love seeing his stuff. Every time I see something like that, I'm excited by it. But we've got Alex Toth, we've got Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, we've got so much good stuff. I think for me the most exciting is actually seeing H.G. Peter, the original Wonder Woman artist, and just seeing this work that laid the foundation for the character, like his work that he did in the 1940s, and I get to see that every day that I'm in the office, and just knowing everything that followed from that. That's really exciting.
It's funny, she's had the same look. For a woman who's always kind of like sometimes associated with fashion and things like that, she's been pretty consistent. But it was funny, I think it was about a few years ago, there was a DC kind of gave her leggings, and then there was a whole big debate of whether like to do pants or no pants. But I'm not a fan of pants, so I was glad that she kind of like always kept it like proper and just like went out there with like no pants. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan of pants is such a great quote. But yeah, it's her costume is very, it's adaptable. If you have the red, white, and blue, if you have the yellow or the gold highlights to it, you can make adjustments. And she has had, some subtle, some not very subtle adjustments over the years. But yeah, that's true of Batman today. Like no matter what costume he has is recognizable, would be recognizable to a 1930s audience. Same for Superman. That's a cool thing. That's part of, I think, keeping the core of the character. Superman, I think you can change up a lot of things as long as you keep an S logo on his chest. I
oh
think
no no, DC got in trouble I think for the New 52. He didn't have the red trunks, remember?
I was upset about that. And
It looked weird. I have to admit, like I read a number of the issues, and every time I'd see him in a panel, I'm like, it just feels off, and then it takes you a second to figure out what's
it
wrong.
looked like he didn't finish getting dressed is what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And my thing my I'll keep it simple, but what I've always said about the when they got rid of the red trunks is, I felt they were changing things to appeal to an audience that where that was not the reason that people weren't buying Superman's monthly comics.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a comic book fan or potential fan who exists who was only staying away from that character because of the red trunks.
Correct.
So changing it to appeal to them, that's I just didn't get it. That was, I kind of felt that was a misstep. I know some creators kind of felt the same way.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody who said, oh, they got rid of the trunks. Now
Now I'm back.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Two more questions and then we'll wrap up. But what you're also saying too, it's funny because they just announced there's a new writer taking over for Batman. But part of the press release and part of the interviews and stuff was that the return of the yellow around the bat logo on his chest was back. The yellow oval or the yellow circle, whatever it is. And it was like, I didn't mind like that one. The trunks thing bothered me, I'll admit, for Superman. But the yellow, not yellow for Batman, I like it because it's different eras, right? So you can kind of know which era you're in. So I wasn't bothered by it, but everyone was all excited the yellow circle or yellow oval is back.
It's that's a cyclical thing. It was but it was part of the character for so long. It was part of the character from 1964 all the way through, around the time of the No Man's Land storyline in 1999 that they, I think just after that, I think it was 2000 that they changed that, and you had Frank Miller playing around with that in the Dark Knight Returns. It's a fun thing. Everybody can debate it. But I'm looking forward to it. Josh Williamson, I've really enjoyed his writing at DC over the years, and I think
he's the new writer for. I didn't mention his name because the focus was the the oval, but yeah, Joshua Williamson.
I really enjoyed his work on Flash, so I think he'll be a good fit.
That was a long run too. Pardon the pun, but I want to wrap up with Wonder Woman because I'm curious too. Like these retrospectives, do they primarily focus on Wonder Woman, or do they acknowledge the villains as well? Because it's the bad guys that kind of make her who she is. That's how you know she's good and just.
Yeah, you do. If you're a Cheetah fan, you will see a lot of Cheetah in this show. And she's by far the biggest, probably best recurring Wonder Woman villains. You do see her, but yeah, I tried to make sure Etta Candy was in there, Steve Trevor. make sure everybody was going to see
Yeah.
some of their favorites when they were checking this one out.
Yeah, I asked because out of the three, if we just focus on like DC, like Batman, Superman, I guess we could even throw in the Flash. They all have really defined, distinct characters. Batman and the Flash, especially. Um, but Wonder Woman, even though she has been around for 80 years, it's kind of like a thin rogues gallery. Like as you mentioned, Cheetah. There's Doctor Psycho for a bit there, but for the most part, it is kind of a thin rogues gallery.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and I think it's it's kind of the nature of the character that they wanted to focus on her and Paradise Island, that they wanted to focus on her supporting cast and things, and it's kind of I guess it's kind of nice that she's not defined so much by that kind of conflict.
Hmm.
She's defined by what she does and by helping people as opposed to who she fights.
Yeah, she's the ambassador.
Yeah.
So, where can people find information about the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco? Where can people find out information on the Legend of Wonder Woman in this exhibition, which is running till December 31st, correct?
Yes. So that again, especially now that's subject to change.
Yeah, I should have
But
put
if you go
asterisk there.
to if you go to cartoonart.org, or you can Google Cartoon Art Museum. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and Tumblr if you wanna track us on social media. And just track us down any of those ways. Just Google Cartoon Art Museum, you'll find us. And I hope we'll see a lot of you there in person over the next few months.
And when do you guys start the John Oliver exhibition? You guys just picked it up. If you want to just mention that briefly.
Yeah, that's a fun thing. Last week tonight, John Oliver's show has a gallery of unusual artwork that they wanted to support art museums throughout the country, especially because a lot of us had to be closed for a year or more because of COVID restrictions. So they're giving us a generous grant, as well as the San Francisco Marin Food Bank is also receiving financial support from them.
Mm-hmm.
And from January 4th to 25th, we'll be displaying this artwork. And it's a fun thing. I was thrilled when they picked us out of apparently about 1,000 applicants. But they reached out. We worked out the details, and this January, any HBO fans, John Oliver fans, I hope will check us out
At the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco. So thank you, Andrew, for like hanging out. We covered quite a bit. We covered Disco Stew should be in an old folks' home.
I'll stand by that. Yes.
That Worlds Without End was quite the jaw-dropping two-parter for G.I. Joe, and that you guys have an exhibition called The Legend of Wonder Woman, which celebrates her 80 years of comic book and adventures. So that's it. We covered quite a bit, didn't we?
We did. We
Yes.
did. Always room for more. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So thank you, Andrew. That was Andrew Farago, the curator of the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco. If you can go, go. That joint is fantastic. It's worth the trip. Actually, San Francisco is generally a really nice place. There's a few things worth checking out. But yeah, if you definitely head out to California, do put that on the list. And you know what? You might even learn something. So there you go. Cue the star from The More You Know. Speaking of knowing, I am Sammy Yunan, and this has been my Summer Lair. For the social media question, tell me, what are some of your favorite Wonder Woman comics? I can be reached at my Summer Lair for all three, IG, Twitter, and Facebook. What are your favorite Wonder Woman comics? I have to say I really dug the recent Brian Azzarello run. Him and was it Cliff Chang and a whole bunch of them? They knocked that one out of the park. You're wonderful for listening to me in a Netflix world. Wonder Woman, yo.